Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Dear viewers, in this lecture, I would like to focus my attention on one of the important applications of GIS, that is Municipal GIS. Municipal GIS deals with various activities related to a city area for identifying properties and its taxation and infrastructure, etc. Municipal GIS contains information about zoning, properties, roads, schools and parks. The adjoining figure shows a typical GIS which may be created for a particular city or maybe a part of the city. Property mapping is a very important aspect, because this is the revenue earning source for any municipality. It has been found that GIS can play a very important role in this particular area. In this study, we are focusing on the Dehradun municipal region, where studies indicate that more than 35 to 50,000 unassessed properties are existing as per last report, and thus the collection of property tax is only between 60 to 68% of the estimated target goal. GIS can be applied to map the properties and assess the property tax very accurately and effectively. The study area considered here is a ward in the city of Dehradun. This is ward number 4, named Hathi Barkala. It comprises of approximately 183 hectares of land, and it is estimated that the total number of the properties as per municipal records is about 865, and that the total number of households or buildings captured in the ward are approximately 1350. This slide shows the location map of Dehradun region and subsequently the Hathi Barkala ward. The selection of the area of interest is that it is the representative of the entire Dehradun municipal region. All physical features present which are expected to be captured in the project are available in Hathi Barkala block. In order to prepare the property tax assessment and other informations, some softwares and tools were used. For example, global positioning system for selection of ground control points, image processing software to identify the buildings, and ArcGIS 9.2 to create the GIS database and to create different types of analysis procedures for query into the digital database. First of all, the satellite data had to be procured for this particular area, because the existing topographical map or other informations were not very updated, and thus it was felt that in order to have proper identification of all the buildings and their locations into the GIS database, satellite data of very high resolution content must be used, and hence the data sets which were freely available on Google Earth were downloaded as tiles through an internal developed utility program, and then these tiles were mosaicked for georeferencing. One can see that in order to create the image of the desired area, image tiles which are demarcated by white lines can be seen, and there were more than 50 such image tiles which had to be mosaicked to create the ward information system using satellite data. In order to carry out the georeferencing, the certain control points, or what we call it as GCPs, were identified using GPS, and also for quality check subsequently for the digital database which was being created. This particular slide, the yellow dots show the ground control points which were identified, for which GPS observations were taken for georeferencing and subsequently for quality checks. For mapping the information and creating the GIS database, the following informations were to be categorized. First of all, the administrative boundary of the ward was digitized, and based on that, the different types of buildings and activities in the ward were identified to be as residential buildings, commercial buildings, mixed built up area, public and semi public structures, public utility buildings, recreational spots, religious structures, slums, roads, canals, rivers, and other important landmarks. Similarly, there were other type of informations which were to be collected, and this was called as the secondary data collection. The secondary data collection includes information like the name of the owner, tenants if there are any, and the area occupied by each category of people. Well, this was one of the most challenging tasks. Data related to property assessment values were also collected after lot of persuasion with the government authorities. In order to provide a distinct characterization to the informations being created, the following attributes were defined for each of the building which was being captured. First is the name, its address information, location coordinates, owner name, floor wise area, and tax assessment information if available. Now, we come to the different types of categorizations of buildings which were identified. First is the residential buildings, and this would be categorized into two categories: flats and apartments. This slide shows the map of the residential buildings as they are digitized and captured from the satellite data. Furthermore, once these are digitized from various sources, they are overlaid for verification on the Google Earth, and one can see that the polygons that are marked in red color on the left hand side match by and large accurately over the Google Earth image over that particular region, and the corresponding area is now shown on a GIS based output map, where all the red locations are the residential buildings within the Hathi Barkhala block. It was also found that when the informations were being captured, there were multiple structures which were there. That is, within one block of building, there were different ownerships or different buildings which were there of multiple characteristics. So, they need to be identified properly, like in terms of the colonies which are there. Some of the buildings may be one story, some may be double stories, some may be multiple stories. So, there were multiple structures which were there. So, these were also captured and stored into the GIS database. Some informations such as medical facilities also exist between the buildings. For example, a doctor is there within a market complex, or he has a private clinic in his home. So, Even though the building is classified as residential building, there is one activity related to the type of usage which the building is being put to, apart from the residential purpose. So, these type of physical features were also captured and incorporated into the database. Then we come to the mapping of commercial buildings. Well, these type commercial buildings will generally take into consideration retail and general business, hotels, community centers and registered parking areas. This shows some of the commercial buildings which have been acquired, for example, the hotels, the business centers, and one can see the color with which they have been identified, so as to provide a distinct information set, so that they can be subsequently used independently of their characterization. This also provides another view of the commercial buildings, wherein we are looking at these buildings which are there within this particular region. For example, a hotel Ekta which is there, and it is a very big complex which can be seen there. Then the next type of information was mixed built up area, that is residential plus and commercial structures. Many times it is found that on the ground floor it is being used as a shopping complex or a shopping center, or there are strings of shops which are there, and residential occupancy on the first floor. Now, this is what is mixed built up area and is of importance to be categorized differently when the property tax assessments have to be carried out. So, this shows some of the mixed built up areas, wherein one would find the shopping centers, the residential and the commercial buildings all existing at one location. Then the government buildings. So, the government buildings normally in residential sectors, government provides multiple story flat system of houses with multiple people staying or multiple occupancy. So, these have to be also categorized in a very different manner. Then public and semi public buildings. These include educational institutes such as schools, colleges, technical institutes, vocational training institutes, health services, government and semi government offices, police station, post office, etc. So, this particular slide shows the locations of different types of public and semi public buildings which are there. Here the location of schools and training institutes have been identified in the database which has been created. Similarly, the locations of schools or private clinics of doctors, they are also been highlighted under public and semi public buildings. When we find that some of the informations, when they are being acquired, they have different levels. For example, in a school, one block may be dedicated to primary section, the second block may be dedicated to the secondary school, and the third block may be dedicated to the high school. However, when the information is being acquired, it is being acquired as a school, but different buildings have different purposes. So, they have to be also categorized and the information acquired. Similarly, in government offices, there can be different buildings wherein people of different positions may be sitting in different blocks within a particular office. So, they need to be identified very critically and separately, so that when the assessment is being done, the assessment does not suffer from impropriety of information. Then we have the next category of information, and that is public utilities. The public utilities will consist of electrical substation, pump house, water tanks, public toilets, and The attributes to these public utilities could be the name of the building, the address information, location coordinates and floor wise area. This particular slide shows the location of some of the public utilities which could be there, such as pump house or electrical substation. Then comes the next type of activity, and that is recreational based buildings or the areas, parks, playground and or stadium, swimming pool, clubs and other types of recreational activities such as cinema house or malls, which could be located within the commercial sector also. Here again, the attributes to these type of buildings would be the name, its address, its location and floor wise area. So, this particular slide, it shows the recreational buildings within the ward area like swimming pool, or the other type of structures which could be there could be pertaining to religion. So, temples, church, mosque, gurdwaras have to be identified separately with the same type of attributes, that is what is the name, the address information, the location coordinates and floor wise area. Another important type of area usage within cities is the slums, and they need to be again categorized. Many times the slum areas are also given approval by the government, or the government creates low housing schemes for low income people. So, we need to also identify such areas where they are located and what type of tax assessment structures are there for these type of regions. Another thing which is important, and that is the transportation facilities such as highways, roads, bridges or flyovers, footpath or road islands, because these would not be subjected to property tax assessment and have to be taken out from the data set when a proper assessment of the land is being made, because this is government land and thus may not be put to the assessment procedure. Well, these will have attributes like name of the structure, locality and the location coordinates. So, this particular slide shows the transportation mapping, that is where are the roads along with their names, and these roads would be taken out from the area for which the property tax assessment is to be done. Similarly, the footpaths and the bridges, they need to be also very properly identified. Apart from this, a rigorous field survey also had to be carried out. A design of schedule was prepared so as to capture all the relevant information required for the assessment of property tax. It was also important that field verification of the information that has been captured from satellite data may also be done. So, a comprehensive testing of schedule to identify the gaps and any unnecessary attribute was undertaken. Schedule was finalized after field testing of the results was undertaken. The collection of information through field survey was primarily door to door survey, interviews, telephonic interviews, meeting with ward members. However, it was found that this particular region has also problem with rain, and so during the survey period, due to incessant rains, the survey was hampered and thus it resulted in certain amount of delays. Furthermore, it was found that a major part of the ward is having undulations, and thus access was a difficult activity, and it had to be, and this also created some form of constraint in the data collection. Another thing which was important in and was observed during field survey, and that was locked properties, that is people do not stay there and the property is locked. So, large number of revisits had to be made to collect the information. Now, coming to the quality checks. First was the georeferencing, that is overlaying of the ground control points on Google Earth. Next was mapping for topological checks, visual checks and geometry checks, for overlaps of information, gaps between features, duplicacy and multi-part polygons. Field survey was undertaken to check for correctness and the completeness of the data, resurvey of sample locations for verification of the correctness and validation using municipality records. The attribute definition was also done through random sample checks to ensure the correctness of the data that was being stored within a GIS database. Now, we come to database integration, data entry. All the data entry had to be done in a pre-designed format and validation of the entered data had to be done, so that checks for any logical errors could be performed. Further, re-verification of suspicious data, for example, ground floor area, it is greater than the plot area, or the ground floor area is less than the built up area, or the divided by the number of floors, and finally, the finalization of the data. Having done this, this particular slide shows a compiled view of the informations for different categories of buildings which are there, and on the right top corner, one through the legend one can see the different types of classification of building which is there in different colors. Having done this, now we look at what is the utility of a municipal GIS database. The potential uses and benefits to municipality GIS database is locating unauthorized houses and construction, locating new houses or new constructions, locating slum areas, finding open space for future planning, locating buildings as per story, locating building as per area or address or owner, or as per location coordinates in terms of lat long values, finding the shortest path between 2 points, finding the distance between 2 locations, finding the area of a building or land, identifying the increase in revenue where as and when the property tax is enhanced, and finally, making queries to the database in order to extract any of the above information or other information which may not have been identified in this list. Potential users of this particular database and the benefits are that it can be used for land use planning and management, urban planning, health facility planning, infrastructure planning, emergency response planning and tourism planning. Navigation of a location, that is, identify the building that you would like to reach. So, look for the address information of that building from the database, define the visible landmarks from the map such as playgrounds or public utility buildings or schools. Path will be provided by the software and the distance obtained from one landmark to another, that is from one intersection to another intersection on the map using appropriate software like GIS can be utilized. In case if there is a building with no name of the road or any landmark near it, get the coordinates of the buildings, search the coordinates from Google Earth using the latitude, longitude. Google will create a bookmark location. Path along the roads will be indicated from your current location to that particular building. So, this particular slide shows the how to identify a particular location. We find that there are 2 dots identified in blue color, one is the origin and the other is the destination, and the black line shows the path to be undertaken by the person so as to reach to that particular location. And each segment length, the distance is identified, that is, as you start from the origin, the first length is about 32 meters, then you take a left turn, proceed for 63 meters, then take another left turn walk straight for nearly 346 meters, take another left turn, walk for 152 meters, take a left turn, walk for some distance, then for about 22.5 meters, then take a right turn, go for another 65 meters, take another right turn and walk for 125 meters, and you will reach your destination. If one adds up all this, it gives the total distance to be covered by the person to travel from one point to another point. Querying the data. One may want to know the distribution of all the property in the ward on the basis of the number of stories. We can do this by applying a simple query. Query the data to identify the number, location and address based on the number of stories, that is distribution of the residential buildings. So, now this slide shows that having provided different types of the stories of buildings, different buildings, single story buildings, double story buildings, 3-story buildings, 4-story buildings can be identified through the query process. Similarly, queries can be made on the basis of the distribution based on the area of the buildings, and one can see that how we can identify all buildings which are having less than 1000 square feet, or buildings having area between 1000 to 2000 square feet, or buildings having area more than 2000 square feet. Similarly, we can query on where are the new constructions which are taking place in a particular region. Similarly, if we would like to find out as to who are the people or who from which building we are getting money, or who are the taxpayers, it is also possible to provide that sort of information. All those buildings which are shown in light yellow color are the buildings where taxpayers are located, and all those buildings where it is shown as orange, these are non-taxpayers, and thus it is very easy to now to identify for the tax collector as to which building he should actually go and where they are located and how to reach to these points, because the connectivity of these buildings via the road system is now. Many times it is necessary that certain developmental activities require acquisition of existing land. For example, I want to widen a existing road. Now, this road is to be widened by about 60 meters from the center line on both the sides. The existing road may be only 20 meters wide. So, in order to identify how much land will be under such a consideration and how many properties would be affected, we can go for proximity analysis, or that is, we can create buffer. With this particular database now available, certain analyses were carried out and certain facts and figures came into light. It was found that the total number of properties as per municipal records were 865. The total number of households or building captured in the ward are approximately 1350. A new revelation which was made from the data set was that within this block there are 51 new constructions which are there, which means there was a increase in the total number of buildings by about 41%. The total area that can be now brought under the tax net for this whole ward is of the order of about 2.09 million square feet. The total area presently under the tax net is of the order of 1.36 million square feet, which means that there can be a total increase of area under the tax net which is of the order of 54%. The total assessment of tax as per municipal record is around rupees 9.5 lakhs, but with the captured data information now created within the GIS, this could be of the order of 14.65 lakhs, again a percentage increase in tax assessment of the order of 54%. It may be noted that for assessment of the property tax, a uniform rate of 70 paisa per square feet has been undertaken as per government norms. Now, we can visualize the distribution of various features which are there in the project, and we can see that 36% of the ward is under residential area, 7% is under public and semi-public, 6% is under transportation, 4% is the slum area, 4% is commercial, 4% is other areas, and 39% of the ward area is vacant. Now, this is a substantial area and could be utilized in the future for developmental activities. So, this table now shows the distribution of the property taxpayers as per the different types of structures which are there, and what we find is that about 71% of the property which is there, they do not pay tax. It is only 29% who are paying the tax, and this is a substantial loss of revenue to the government. Furthermore, we can also make an assessment of the distribution of the newly or extended properties, and it can be found that about 30% of the properties as per record have undergone extension, while there has been 5% new construction which is there, which means about 35% of the area is not being subjected to taxation. Another information which is very important, and that is what is the rented property in a particular ward, and it is found that about 8% of the property is rented, and this could mean that this is a revenue earning on the part of the owner, and for that particular area the owner should be charged a higher property tax, which again would mean that there would be a enhancement in the revenue generation. Interesting to note is that in the residential region about 23% of the property is rented area. So, this particular slide shows the distribution of the property which has been rented, and one can see that residential areas are having about 566 properties which are under rented category. Similarly, what we can do is we can also find out what is the distribution of taxpayers based on the locality, and based on that the assessment can be made, and it is found that in majority of the localities the non-payers of tax is substantially high. This particular slide shows the graphical representation of the locality wise distribution of taxpayers. So, based on this we can now make an assessment of the property tax. The current assessment of the property tax is of the order of about nearly the individual residential units value which is there is about 2.5 million, whereas the assessment in terms of Indian rupees comes out to be 284 lakhs of rupees, thousands of rupees. So, similarly, when this is reviewed against the study that has been performed, it is found that against 284,000 rupees, the actual assessment of the tax is nearly 1.1 million rupees, which means a substantial rise of the order of 300% in terms of revenue generation for the municipality. So, this shows the breakup of the current tax and the proposed scenario which is there. Well, in order to carry out this particular survey and preparation of the municipal GIS, there were certain issues which had to be resolved. At many locations, dense tree cover on the satellite image obscured the ground information. Satellite image was not useful in such cases to map the land parcel. Field visits were undertaken to locate such areas and then mapped on the features. The Google Earth image, which was used for capturing the physical features, was of 2005, whereas the study was being undertaken for the year 2009, and there had been enormous developments during this particular time frame. Old structures had been renovated and new structures had come up in 4 years' time in this region. There are large number of vacant plots which have been captured, and the name of the owner is provided in the database through field investigation, which is not available with the municipality currently. Similarly, multiple family dwellings was also resolved by assigning a group building ID to each MFD building, and the details of each dwelling within the large building area is provided through a separate Excel sheet which is linked to the feature using the building group ID. Related to survey data capture, specifically in terms of the tenants residing in the buildings were not able to provide accurate information about the building. Owners were contacted telephonically, and in case the owner was not available, the members of the society or resident welfare society and ward members were contacted. The residents of the area were hesitant in divulging the details of the area of the property. The municipal records provided belong to the year 2006. However, a large number of changes were observed in the cases in the field in terms of the name of the owner. In such cases, we maintained the database as per the municipal data. In my next lecture, I shall now discuss the role of remote sensing in assessing reservoir sedimentation. Thank you.